Even disturbing going on in the street, I tend to be drawn to it.
For a long time, it felt like James Spader simply disappeared. One day, he was everywhere. His face, his voice, his strange calm presence filled movies and television shows. He played characters that felt uncomfortable, but impossible to ignore. He had a way of standing still while everyone else moved around him in chaos. And then, slowly, without drama or explanation, he faded from view. There was no big announcement, no emotional goodbye, no clear ending, just silence. People began to ask the same question again and again. Why did James Spader disappear from Hollywood? The answer, however, is not as simple as people think. To understand it, you have to go back to the very beginning, to the kind of life he was born into, and the way he learned to see the world long before cameras ever found him. James Spader was born into a household filled with education, structure, and authority. His father taught English at a private prep school, and his mother taught art at another school nearby. The family lived in housing provided by the school, right next to classrooms and dorms. From a distance, this looked like a life of comfort and privilege. But in reality, things were much simpler. Teachers did not make much money, and raising children on school salaries meant the family had to be careful. There was no luxury, no excess. What there was, instead, was observation. From a young age, James was surrounded by adults, rules, routines, and expectations. He watched how people behaved when they thought they were being proper. He noticed how different people acted behind closed doors. Even as a child, he was paying attention. School, however, never worked well for him. Despite being surrounded by teachers and learning, James struggled to sit still. He found classrooms restrictive. He later described himself as a bad student, not because he was unintelligent, but because he could not fit into the rigid system around him. He was restless, easily bored, and constantly looking for something else to focus on. Instead of excelling in class, he found other ways to keep himself busy. He worked small jobs from a very young age. He ran errands. He babysat. He sold things. He even set up a small stand outside his home to sell frozen juice. These were not childhood hobbies. They were signs of someone trying to create movement in a life that felt too controlled. He wanted independence, even if he did not yet know what that meant. His parents, however, were supportive. They did not push him aggressively or try to force him into a mold. His father, in particular, left a strong impression. He was known as a calm and fair man, someone students respected rather than feared. James watched how authority could exist without loudness, how control could come from stillness instead of force. That lesson would stay with him for life. One of the most important influences on James Spader came from his home environment. His family was unusually open for its time. Privacy was not treated as something strict or sacred. Doors were often left open. Bodies were not hidden. His parents were not concerned with shame or modesty. James grew up around strong women, with older sisters who moved through the world confidently. Sexuality, power, and identity were not taboo subjects. They were simply part of life. James later said that he could not remember a time when sexuality was not already part of how he understood the world. This openness shaped how he viewed human behavior. It made him curious. It made him attentive to small signals, to quiet dynamics, to moments that others might overlook. One story from his childhood captures this perfectly. During summers, the family stayed in a camp that had been built from a converted chicken coop. The walls were thin and full of small holes. James's room was next to his sister's. Through those tiny gaps, he could hear conversations, movements, emotions. He became an observer. He watched life happen before he was fully ready to understand it. That habit of watching, noticing, and absorbing never left him. It simply transformed into acting later on. When James finally discovered acting, everything changed. For the first time, he felt focused. Acting gave him structure without confinement. It allowed him to explore behavior, power, desire, and emotion in a way that felt natural. School, by comparison, felt portless. At 17, he made a decision that many would consider reckless. He dropped out and moved to New York City to become an actor. There was no safety net. There was no guarantee. There was only curiosity and need. Life in New York was difficult. He worked strange jobs to survive. He shoveled horse manure. He took whatever work he could find. One of the strangest jobs he ever had was teaching yoga, despite knowing nothing about yoga. He made it up as he went along. He dimmed the lights, raised the heat, and talked people through poses he invented. Sometimes, he even fell asleep during class. It was not professional. It was not graceful. But it kept him alive. That period taught him something important. Acting was not sacred to him. It was not a calling. It was work. It was something he did because it allowed him to survive and to explore human behavior at the same time. That attitude would shape every choice he made later. Even when success arrived, he never treated acting as something precious. It was simply the best job he had found so far. When James Spader's career began to take off, it did so in a strange and uncomfortable way, much like the man himself. He was handsome, confident, and composed, but there was always something unsettling beneath the surface. Hollywood did not know where to place him. He looked like a leading man, but he did not behave like one. He did not project warmth, safety, or emotional openness. Instead, he brought control, stillness, and a quiet sense of danger. Casting directors noticed this immediately. Rather than forcing him into heroic roles that didn't fit, they placed him in characters that felt morally unclear. He became the villain, the rich bully, the manipulator, the man people loved to hate. In the 1980s, he built a reputation playing arrogant, slick characters who felt real in a deeply uncomfortable way. His performance in Pretty in Pink was so convincing that people reportedly disliked him in real life after seeing it. That reaction proved how effective he was. He did not soften his characters to make them likable. As the years passed, Spader moved into leading roles, but he never chose safe stories. His characters were obsessive, sexual, emotionally distant, and psychologically complex. He was drawn to stories about power and desire, about control and vulnerability, about relationships that made audiences uneasy. This was not an accident. These themes reflected his own curiosity about human behavior. While other actors chased fame, franchises, and mass appeal, Spader followed interest. He chose roles that allowed him to explore strange emotional spaces. This made his career unpredictable. Some films were celebrated. Others were misunderstood. Many were ignored by mainstream audiences entirely. But Spader did not seem bothered. He worked when he needed to. He stopped when he wanted to. He took summers off to be with his children. He openly admitted that money often played a role in his decisions. He was honest about needing to pay bills. There was no romantic story about artistic purity. There was only reality. One of the most important turning points in his career came later than expected. While many actors struggle after turning 40, James Spader found new life. His role in Secretary in 2002 reintroduced him to audiences in a powerful way. He played a character who combined emotional distance, control, and intimacy into something deeply unsettling. The performance was quiet, but intense. According to his co-star, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Spader did not separate himself from the character easily. On set, he stayed distant. He avoided normal social behavior. He did not try to be friendly. This was not cruelty, it was process. He was not interested in casual connection. He was focused on the role. Their working relationship became a strange reflection of the film itself. It was controlled, distant, and charged with tension. That same quality followed him into television, where he found unexpected success. When he joined the practice, he brought a new energy to the show. His character, Alan Shore, was brilliant, unethical, charming, and self-aware. He disrupted the balance of the series in a way that worked. That success carried into Boston Legal, where his chemistry with William Shatner became legendary. Together, they created something rare. The show balanced humor and seriousness, absurdity and emotional depth. Spader won awards. He became a television star. Yet even here, he never fully embraced the spotlight. He treated television as steady work, not as a reinvention of his identity. This pattern continued when he joined The Office as Robert California. On paper, the casting was bold. In practice, it revealed a deeper truth about James Spader. The Office was a show built on neediness. Its humor came from characters wanting approval, love, and validation. Michael Scott worked because he wanted too much and failed publicly. Robert California wanted nothing. He was calm. He was controlled. He watched instead of reacting. This made him fascinating, but incompatible. His presence changed the rhythm of the show. Scenes slowed down. Energy drained. It was not a failure of talent. It was a mismatch of worlds. Spader was doing what he always did. He was exploring power and control, but the show needed vulnerability. Behind the scenes, the difference in style became clear. The cast was used to fast reactions and loose timing. Spader worked in long, deliberate moments. Editing could not always make those styles fit together. Eventually, the experiment ended. Fans blamed Spader, but the truth was simpler. The show was not built for him, and he was never going to change to fit it. This moment marked the beginning of the illusion that James Spader disappeared. In reality, he simply stepped away again, as he always had. After his time on The Office and later The Blacklist, James Spader once again faded from public view. There were fewer interviews, fewer red carpets, fewer headlines. For many actors, this would be considered a problem. For Spader, it was a relief. He has always disliked the performance of fame. He does not enjoy publicity. He does not enjoy being seen. He has described premieres as exhausting and overwhelming. He does not like talking about himself. He prefers to let the work exist on its own. This discomfort with visibility has been present since the beginning of his career. While other actors carefully built public images, Spader avoided them. He did not chase attention. He did not cultivate mystery on purpose. He simply lived his life. Off-screen, his priorities were clear. He wanted time, he wanted space, he wanted control over how much of himself he gave away. He has admitted that he is not good at planning a career. He dislikes networking. He dislikes developing projects. He dislikes the business side of acting. If he is not actively working on a set, he would rather not engage with Hollywood at all. This attitude made him unreliable in the eyes of the industry. He did not play the game. He did not stay visible. He did not fight for relevance. But this was never about rejection. It was about choice. Even financially, Spader has been honest about his flaws. He has said he is not responsible with money. He works, earns, spends, and then finds himself needing to work again. This cycle pushed him toward television, which offered stability. But once stability was achieved, he allowed himself to disappear again. His highest-grossing project, Avengers: Age of Ultron, perfectly represents his career. He did not appear on screen. He lent his voice to a cold, intelligent villain. It was powerful, it was memorable, and it required no fame performance. It was James Spader in his purest form, controlled, distant, unsettling. Over the years, Spader has gained a reputation for being difficult. He is known for his attention to detail. He notices things others miss. He will stop a scene if something feels wrong. This perfectionism can be frustrating, but it is also why his performances feel alive. He does not compromise easily. He does not adjust himself to fit expectations. Instead, he expects the work to meet him where he stands. This approach limits opportunities, but it deepens the ones he takes. His entire career reflects this trade-off. He could have been bigger. He could have been everywhere. But that would have required becoming someone else. James Spader never disappeared because he failed. He disappeared because he refused to belong. He built a career on the edges of the industry, choosing curiosity over comfort, interest over exposure. He values living more than visibility. When he works, he gives everything. When he stops, he truly stops. That rhythm confuses audiences used to constant presence. But it is the rhythm of someone who understands himself. In the end, James Spader's disappearance is not a mystery. It is a pattern. A man who steps into the spotlight only when it serves him, and walks away the moment it doesn't. And maybe that is why he still feels so unsettling. Not because he vanished, but because he was never ours to keep. By the time James Spader faded from regular public view, something unusual had already happened. He had become one of those actors people felt strongly about without fully understanding why. Some admired him deeply. Others found him uncomfortable or even unsettling. Very few felt neutral. That reaction did not come from fame or overexposure. It came from presence. Spader has always had the ability to make audiences feel watched rather than entertained. He does not reach out emotionally. He does not invite sympathy. Instead, he stands still and lets people project their own discomfort onto him. That quality made him powerful, but it also made him difficult to place within the usual Hollywood system. Most stars succeed by being accessible. They smile, explain themselves, and reassure audiences that they are safe. Spader does the opposite. He withholds. He observes. He leaves space where others fill it with noise. Over time, this created a strange disconnect. Audiences felt like they knew him, but he never confirmed that feeling. This gap between perception and reality is a big reason people believe he disappeared. When someone does not constantly remind the world of their presence, the world assumes they are gone. But, in Spader's case, absence was never the result of decline. It was the result of consistency. He behaved the same way at the height of his success as he did when he was unknown. He worked when interested or when necessary, and then he stopped. He never chased momentum. Hollywood, however, is built entirely on momentum. Careers are expected to rise, expand, and repeat. Actors are encouraged to stay visible, to follow success with more success, and to build brands that never rest. James Spader never did that. He treated acting as a job, not an identity. Once the job was done, he returned to his private life. This made his career difficult to track. There was no clear arc, no steady climb, no obvious fall. Just a series of intense appearances separated by long periods of silence. For casual viewers, that silence felt like disappearance. For Spader, it felt like living. Another reason his legacy feels confusing is because he never belonged to a single genre or audience. He was too strange for mainstream romance, too controlled for broad comedy, too sexual for traditional drama, and too thoughtful for action films. Even when he appeared in a blockbuster like Avengers: Age of Ultron, he did so as a voice, not a face. He lent intelligence and menace to a character that felt more philosophical than physical. Ultron was not just a villain who wanted power. He was a being questioning existence, humanity, and purpose. That role fit Spader perfectly, but it did not increase his visibility the usual way. It added to his reputation without placing him at the center of attention. This pattern repeated throughout his career. His most memorable performances often came from roles that lived slightly outside the mainstream. Films like Crash and Secretary were not designed to be comfortable or widely appealing. They asked audiences to sit with discomfort and question their own reactions. These were not crowd-pleasing choices. They were curiosity-driven choices. Over time, this shaped how the industry viewed him. Studios prefer actors who are predictable, flexible, and easy to market. Spader was none of those things. He brought intensity into rooms that expected lightness. He brought stillness into scenes built on chaos. He refused to soften edges or explain motivations. This made collaboration harder, but it also made his work unforgettable. Many actors disappear because they lose relevance. James Spader disappeared because he never chased it in the first place. This difference matters. When actors burn out, their absence feels empty. When Spader steps away, his absence feels intentional. It feels like part of the performance. Even now, people talk about him as if he might return at any moment, not because he promises it, but because his career has trained audiences to expect unpredictability. He appears, leaves an impression, and vanishes again. That rhythm has become his signature. It also explains why younger audiences continue to discover him. Streaming platforms have introduced his work to new viewers who were not alive during his early career. These viewers often react the same way older audiences did. They feel unsettled. They feel curious. They search for interviews only to find very few. They try to understand the man behind the characters and realize that he does not offer easy answers. This lack of accessibility makes him feel almost out of time. In an era where celebrities share everything, Spader shares almost nothing. That restraint feels unusual, even radical. It creates distance, but it also creates respect. People sense that he does not need them to like him. That confidence, or perhaps indifference, is rare. It is also why his work continues to resonate. His performances do not age the way trend-driven roles do. They exist in emotional spaces that remain relevant because human discomfort does not change. Power dynamics, control, desire, and identity are timeless subjects. Spader built his career exploring those spaces quietly and patiently. He never rushed. He never simplified. He trusted the audience to meet him halfway. Some did, some did not. He never seemed concerned either way. In the end, James Spader's legacy is not defined by how much work he has done, but by how deeply it lingers. His characters stay with people. They leave questions rather than closure. That is not an accident. It reflects a man who values curiosity over clarity and depth over comfort. He did not disappear because Hollywood rejected him. He stepped away because Hollywood asks for constant presence, and Spader has always preferred meaningful absence. His career is not a story of loss. It is a story of refusal. Refusal to perform fame. Refusal to chase relevance. Refusal to belong to a system that values noise over substance. And that is why, even now, when his name comes up, people still lean in. Not because he is everywhere, but because when he appears, he matters.